Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Development Control and Regulatory Board, Thursday the 8th of March 2018. It is 2 o'clock, so we'll start the meeting. Might I remind you, everyone present, that the meeting will be broadcast live via the County Council's website and will also be available for viewing on the County Council website after this meeting. Thank you. Moving on to item number 1 is minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of February 2018. Been moved and seconded. All in favour? Thank you very much. Unanimous. Item number 2, question time. We have received no questions. Item number 3, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. We have none. Item 4, to advise of any other items which the Chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. We don't have any of those either. Item 5 is declarations of interest. It is noted that all members who are also members of a parish, town or district or liaison committee will have personal interest in those applications which relate to areas covered by those authorities. Are there any other interests? That's no, Ewan, there isn't. Item 6 is presentation of petitions. No petitions have been received. Now we come to the main parts of the agenda, which is item number 7, which is works to a tree with a tree preservation order on it at Quarndon. Could I ask Mr. Shaw to speak to this application, please? Yes. Yes.
Some people in the room are not mentioned on the heading sheet as being members of the committee.
On the.
Not giving out anybody's substituting. Not mentioning anybody as substituting.
Well, I don't think it's normal that we do, but if
we don't normally do.
If you would like it,
it's not like you did this last time. Anybody's substitution should be raised at the beginning of the meeting.
Well,
it's not part of the constitution or
normal procedure that we do.
It's not for Leicestershire County Council.
If it helps you, Mr. Bolton, Mr. Bremner is here for Councillor Gillard. Mr. O'Shea is here for Mrs. Richardson. On the Conservative side, I assume you're all the same people as you was yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Item 7 then. Mr. Shaw, would you please speak to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an application that's been submitted by Mrs. Kirkpatrick of 23 Paddock Close, Quorn. Thin the crown of 2 oak trees by 15% and reduce the crowns by 20%. The 2 trees are located in the rear garden of number 20. There we go. Number 27. There's number 23, and there's 25 in between there. Just to give you some background, the consent was granted in December 2006 to crown thin and prune the 2 trees, and this work has been carried out. In addition, a further consent was granted under delegated powers in January 2018 to thin the 2 oak trees and remove lower branches to provide a clearance of 4 metres over the property. This work has been carried out. The reason for the application is that the The applicant is concerned about shading in her garden and wishes to improve the light conditions to her property. Consideration was given to the application, and it is concluded that the proposed crown reduction by 20% of the 2 oak trees by pruning back to secondary branches back to the regrowth points, which are shown here. You can see where they've been pruned back previously. Will moderately improve light conditions to 23 Paddock Close, and also incidentally to the property at 27 and 25. This work will have a negligible detrimental impact on the amenity of the area and is in accordance with guidelines set out in the British Standard. And that the 15% crown thinning work has already been carried out. Hence the recommendation that consent is granted to crown reduce the 2 oak trees, T7 and T8, by pruning regrowth back to the previous points, and inform the applicant that the 15% crown thinning work has already been carried out in accordance with the previous decision issued in January 2018. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Michael.
I think David was first, but I will go. Thank you, Chair. Just to reassure me, I mean, this is an application by somebody who doesn't live at the address. So I assume the owner, you've spoken to the owner of 27.
Yes, I've stated in the report that the owners of the 2 oak trees, at 27 Paddock Close, has raised no objections to the proposed pruning works.
I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
you had personally spoken
Yes,
to them,
I have, yes.
and they are fully aware of what's...
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Councillor Bremner, you wish to speak.
This might be slightly pedantic, but it's been reduced by 20% to the pruning point, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Because in 2006 it was pruned up to 30%.
Yes,
So if it was to 30% the pruning, then you're going to prune more than 20% because you're going back to the pruning point.
the pruning.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
No, the pruning included sort of thinning out as well, so it was sort of a combination really of pruning, reduction and some crown thinning works as well. But to prune it back to the existing pruning points is probably less than 20%. It's just an estimate. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
In that case, I'm happy to agree with the officer's recommendation.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak about it? David.
I know this is a flippant remark, but can I draw your attention to the heading above it? Charnwood Borough Rough Council.
Oh, right. Apologies, Charnwood Borough.
And if you're saying that Charnwood is a rough council, I will concur without a judgment.
I wouldn't even begin to say.
Okay, well, it's been moved and... Oh, Ozzy, sorry, Ozzy. I don't think it was, no.
I'll second it then.
Okay. Well, if there's no more comments, we'll take a vote on it then, please. All in favour? You to be unanimous? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Next item is item 8, which is an application by Leicestershire County Council for some industrial units at Colville. Lonnie, would you speak to this report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Firstly, an apology, Chairman. The papers were sent out without the location plan, which I think now you've had in advance of this meeting. But this proposal, as you quite rightly say, is a proposal by the County Council for industrial units at Vulcan Way in Colville, and the plan on the screen shows you its location. It's located in the middle of a larger industrial estate, as you can see from the overhead there, currently used as a haulage yard with surrounding industrial units around it. The slightly unusual element of this, it has already received planning permission from North West Leicestershire District Council because at that time, a couple of years ago, the County Council wanted to dispose of the asset with the benefit of planning permission. In hindsight, it now wants to develop the site itself, and hence it has to come to you under Regulation 3 of the Town and Country Planning Regulations. So that's why we sort of have to go and do it a bit again, but there's more detail in terms of a full application as opposed to the outline to North West Leicestershire. So in terms of what's being proposed and what the site looks like, the top photograph there is a photograph of the site, which is there. Sorry, it's not a very clear picture from this lighting, but it is a site there, which is access there with some planting on the frontage. And just this photograph below just shows you some typical buildings on the Vulcan Industrial Estate, just to give you an idea of what other things look like. In terms of the proposal, there are 4 blocks being proposed, facing each other with some car parking, HGV access, access points on 2 sides, some strengthening of the vegetation. And in terms of the design, all the blocks are pretty much similar in design. There'll be a steel portal frame, and there'll be various types of cladding on it, some wood and some metal, with some large glazing points to give it a bit of interest and contrasting colours. That's block 1, and as I go through the blocks, you'll see that they are very similar in their design and their outlook. That was 2, this is 3, and that's 4. So this gives you an impression of the details of the design. As you see from the report, there are no objections from any of the consultees nor from neighbours. The local member, Dr. Einan, has written in, and she, although had concerns previously, is now supportive of the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Lonnie. Members? Mr. Crooks.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a brownfield site. It's in an industrial estate. I haven't got a problem with it. I'll move it, Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Oh, several seconders. Mr. Bolt, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I noticed there's nothing on here about wheel washing from leaving the site. I thought it'd be a condition that the wheels be washed before they leave the site. Stop mud going on the road. I couldn't find one anywhere about wheel washing.
I think that's main. Are you talking about while the construction is taking place?
Yes.
Or after?
While construction is taking place.
Yes, Chairman. Sorry, Chairman. Condition number 5 says no development shall commence on the site until such time.
I missed that.
Yeah, there's all.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Have you done, Mr. Bolt?
Yeah.
Oh, Dr. Bremner.
Just like a little bit of background on how you came to the decision to design the site as you have. I guess you've assessed business need, or is it that you wanted to put as many units on there as possible to get as much rent as possible?
I don't know whether you're able to answer that, Lonick, or not.
It's not really a planning issue, Chairman.
No.
Chairman, we're the planning authority. This part of the county council, you and the planning office did not design the site. We are asked to assess the proposal as put together by the county council, who wants to market this for industrial units. It's part of a broader attempt to encourage employment in the area. So hence there's a mix of industrial units. It matches what the county council, I think supported by the LEP, what they think the market needs and the economy needs, and I think it's designed on that basis. But really our job is to assess whether this location, the land use and the design is acceptable in this part of the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. I mean, that question is really a question for the Estates Department rather than this planning committee. It's been moved and seconded. All in favour? That looks to be another unanimous decision then. Move. Right, next one is item 9, which is an application by the council again to provide for classrooms at Shepshire. Lonnie, would you speak to this report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a brief introduction. Yes, a four classroom block at Croft Primary School. Again, slightly unusual. Croft Primary School is an academy school, and normally any proposals that the academy themselves want to promote would be a matter for the local planning authority, the district council. In this case, the county council is providing the funding and will be commissioning the development, and it is still in the county council's ownership in terms of the land, so it is a matter that comes under Regulation 3 for you to determine, and that's why it's here before you. So the location is, you can see the school in a fairly extensive site in Shepshire. Again, aerial photograph just gives you a context of the site. That's the existing school, hard play area here, access along here, quite an extensive site. The proposal is for a 4 classroom block and a hall there together with a sprinkler, pump, extension to the existing car park, amendments to the access road, and an extension to the hard play area in replacement for what's been taken by this proposal. Again, give you some insight to what the site looks like. This is the hard play area where the building is proposed. Don't know whether you can see on this photo, but there is an embankment around the field, and just to the right here the land drops, and this photograph really is just looking over that fence, and it shows you the levels and how far it drops to the existing school. I've tried to show you here just a picture of the existing school, which has red bricks and a grey roof. That just for context, so you understand when it comes to looking at what the new building might look like. And there it is. That's the design, the classroom block with the hall. It'll be clad in material that seeks to match the colour of the existing brickwork. Maybe it hasn't come out that well on this slide, plus some contrasting colours. So give it a link, but also a modern feel. And also just give you some impression of what the sprinkler compound is like, and that's set near the school but a little bit away from it. Again, just to give you some indication of the levels on the site, as I've said, it does drop, and that's a sort of cross-section through looking northwards on the southern elevation, and again a bit more context, and that's the existing school there, so you can see how the levels are across the site. I think that's the last slide, and you'll see from the report that there have been some concerns from the local residents, particularly around car parking and traffic in and around the school, something that I'm sure members will be aware that happens quite a lot on school sites. Chairman, there's also, I need to bring your attention to an amendment to the report, and you do have an amendment sheet that I've circulated. There is, first of all, an error in the report as published in your pack at paragraph 31 and subsequent paragraphs that relate to cycle parking. Paragraph 31 shouldn't be there at all, Chairman. Not sure why or how that got in, but there already is cycle parking provision on the site, so there is no need for any cycle provision. So paragraph 31 needs to be struck from your report, Chair, together with the reference in paragraph 35 in a conclusion, which again refers to cycle parking, and that was also translated through to condition 9, requesting cycling facilities, but in fact they are there. So all that needs to be struck from the report in terms of cycling. The amendment sheet itself is reporting to you the views of the local highway authority, which at the time of writing this report we didn't have the official version of it. We have now, and this is set out for you. You can see that essentially they do not have any objections, subject to some conditions and reference to ensuring that a travel plan is put in place. And so in order to put in the highway comments into paragraph 32, that needs to be replaced as per this amendment sheet, and that's just a reference to ensuring that a travel plan is in place. And the new condition, additional condition, will go in at condition 9, which is the condition that I just deleted, which related to cycle facilities. I hope it's not too confusing for you, Chairman, but I think the amendment sheet does explain that. Essentially, what it means is there's no cycling requirement because it's already there. There's an additional condition on construction traffic from the Highway Authority. Thank you, Chairman. On that basis, I'll pause. Thank you.
I'm certainly pleased you explained it and I didn't have to on it. Mrs Radford has graced her with her presence this afternoon and wishes to speak on this item. I'm going to allow you up to 5 minutes, Mrs Radford. You don't have to speak for 5 minutes. But
you'll all be grateful for that, won't you?
When you're ready.
Right, I don't think I should be speaking for 5 minutes. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm certainly in favour of this, and it's long overdue because the school now is bursting at its seams. It's a very popular school, and with all the extra houses in Shepshed, it's needed. And of course, last year we were now having to take, the school was now having to take 11-year pupils, 11-year-old pupils, because of how the systems worked in Shepshed. They've got a very small hall, which I think in some instances now they have to use for teaching because of all the extra children that are coming. There was only one resident got in touch with me because of where they're putting the new extra hard standing for the school, which is going to be taken away with the extension. They were concerned about the runoff water. Now that's all been taken care of, so I was pleased about that. The officer went out to meet the residents after I spoke to the officer. There's only one thing that I'm asking for, and I don't think I'm going to get it, but the residents have asked me to ask for it. If we can have yellow lines put a bit around there, because if you can look there, we've got, well, I think if we can go out a bit, we've got about 3 little side roads coming off. Porlock Close, Malvern Avenue and that, and the parents all park round there at that junction. It gets a bit dangerous, but I'm not the only school in the county that has problems with that, so I've been asked by the residents to ask if we can have yellow lines. Thank you.
Any questions for Mrs Radford before she departs the seat? No? Thank you, Mr Radford. Thank you very much indeed. Right, open to members. David.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. There's an expression here I've not come across before. Could someone please tell me what is a hit and miss vertical timber fence? Hit and miss, I don't know what that is. No problem with the application itself, it's just a detail. This.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just trying to have a look at the photograph. I didn't take much notice of that. I just assumed it was a fence with a few gaps in it, but that's my interpretation, Chairman. But I'm not entirely sure. But it's a wooden fence, basically.
Was there something else, David, or no? Dan?
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is good because obviously schools need, as they're growing now and as we're building more, we're being urged to do that. I know this application isn't appropriate because really we should be thinking of a new builds in the future, that we seriously look at how we allow people onto a site and off a site. If we have a cinema, they'll have car parking. We have car parking here, libraries, leisure facilities. Schools are notorious. They're normally not on a main road. There's not good parking. I know we can't do anything here, apart from this request that you've heard earlier on. But I hope in the future, when we do start to build new schools as we replace some of the old ones, that we really seriously look how we can get the volume of people in cars. The days have gone where children would normally walk on their own. They're now driven, and it's not just the winter months, but it's an habitual thing, and particularly the young children that we're looking at. It's essential that we then look at it as a long-term plan, that parking can be established in a way to make it safer and easier, not just for the people driving or the children getting out of vehicles, but the people who live there, because this is a massive problem. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dan. Mr. Crooks.
Thank you, Chairman. On that particular incident, I did flag up this morning that one of the schools in my area, the head has written to the parents and asked them to be more sensible with the parking. One of the reasons was that they were parking across people's accesses and they couldn't get out to go to. One in particular had urgent medical appointment and couldn't get out and had to go over to school and find out whose car it was and got a lot of abuse. The head did write to the parents. It has helped to some extent. So, you know, I just wondered whether that's an option in this case. And then on the other thing I was going to ask, Chairman, again, I know I flagged it up again this morning. I'm still puzzled by this academy job. I thought when they went on an academy, they were out on their own. I didn't realise that in some instances we were building, extensions and things on the site. Having said that, it's much needed because I know quite a few schools in my area are full to the brim, sort of thing. So, you know, I'm in favour of it, but it does seem a strange thing that they can cherry pick what they want to do in academies.
Yeah. Could you pick up on those 2 points?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. On the academy point first, perhaps. Yes, it is odd because they are funded directly through government. They have their own money, and they can, if they choose to build something or do something on that school, they can do so. And the planning regulations state that unless the county council themselves is the developer and the landowner, then it's a matter that we can't deal with. If we are the landowner and the developer, then we have no choice. We have to deal with it. The regulations say that county council shall deal with it. So on this side, yes, it seems a bit odd. We need planning permission, but once it's built, it'll be handed over to the academy, and then any future amendments or extensions that they want to do and fund themselves, they will seek permission from the local planning authority. With regards to the parking and head teacher maybe informing residents, there is a condition on here about updating the school travel plan, and we would be expecting the travel plan to include some kind of management activities by the head teacher. So that should be picked up, but if members want to augment that condition, you could add something that, including managing car parking, or we could do an advisory note saying, when you do your travel plan, please make sure you for example, let the parents know what is required in terms of the travel plan. That should be done anyway, Chair. And I think probably on reflection, the advice would be maybe we could do an advisory note rather than trying to amend the condition here on the hoof. Thank you, Chairman.
Dr. Bemra.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to the cycle parking facility. Because the school is expanding, have you, or has the school reported to you a proper assessment of the need with the expansion and whether the existing cycle facility is sufficient, or is it just an assumption made within the council? Because I think we could brush over that really quickly, and within a travel plan, you would expect there to be an encouragement for people to walk and cycle. It's an expanding school, so I think there should be a little. If it hasn't been done, I think there should be a more detailed assessment over just crossing out a paragraph. But you're probably going to tell me it has been done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There was an assessment of the existing infrastructure in terms of how many new staff, how much new parking, and the sort of size of the premises. The existing cycle park, just for information, is just there, and it holds 30 cycles. I've not seen any assessment that says, oh, because we're having this extra facilities, we need extra cycling. So Dr. Brenner's right, but I'm being I'm following the Highway Authority's advice, who haven't suggested that there's a requirement for cycling. If the travel plan outcome is that we need more cycle spaces, then that's the time when they should come forward. I'm not sure whether we today could examine what the need for cycling is. I mean, they've got 30 in there. There's been no suggestion that they need more by anyone, Chairman.
Mrs. Broadley, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I have no objections to this, but just for my information, because I don't know and I would like to be aware. Obviously, before schools became academies, the ground and the buildings were Leicestershire County Council. When they changed over to academies, does this mean that Leicestershire County Council still owns all the land and the buildings that the schools are built on, or did they transfer when they became academies? I know it's not a planning issue, but I would like to understand why this has come about.
Thank you, Chairman. When schools convert from local authority control to academy control, the County Council grants them a long lease. The County Council retains the freehold, but they have a 99-year lease, which effectively gives them all the powers they need to manage and run the school in terms of property issues, but we retain the freehold.
And that includes the building?
Or anything on the premises
Right,
is part of the freehold. We give them a lease for the premises, any other bits and pieces. That's how it works.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see we're putting some Swift boxes up on the school, but I thought we'd put some bat boxes there as well, because it says in the report on page 33 the possibility of bats being present, and I thought if we're putting Swift boxes up, we'd put bat boxes up as well, just to encourage them to do that as well. It's nice to put in Swift boxes there because they are a declining species, and it's nice to start with that.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, we didn't pick that up because the county ecologist said there are, there were no bats identified on this site. If there were, maybe there would be some justification to put bat boxes up, but there aren't any.
On page 36 at the bottom of ecology, to protect nesting birds and trees that have potential as bat roosts. So it's got the potential there.
Yes, Chairman, that's right. But I think my point was there were no identified. But I'm in members' hands. If members want to put a condition about bat boxes, they can do. But I'm just trying to work out whether you have sufficient justification to do that. But I'm in your hands, Chair.
Well, I've nothing moved at the moment. I mean, obviously. Oh, Michael, sorry.
Yeah, I've never said this before, but I have some sympathy with Mrs. Radford. We all know what schools are like across the county. We do put yellow lines in. Problem is that just moves the problem farther out and makes it somebody else's issue. Drives blocked, can't get out. I wish there was a solution. All schools should have a travel plan. Most of them do, but I don't think most of them actually have a vigorous travel plan which works properly. Do they do the walking buses? I mean, school transport, diminishing all the time. There's another thing that keeps cars off the road. It's an ever-growing problem, and like Mr. Harrison said, perhaps one day when we do build new schools, we'll actually incorporate, I don't think you need parking for parents, but you need a proper drop-off system, which you could easily incorporate in some of the schools we've got, and certainly new builds, and that would go some way to getting rid of it, because, you know, 25% of my issues are school parking. And I've not been able to do a thing about it over the past 15 years. Occasionally you get some yellow lines where it's a real issue, but generally it's an ongoing problem. Until we have a major rethink, we're stuck with it.
You're right, Michael. I mean, school gate parking all in Leicestershire is just the same. It's a constant problem, really.
Mr. O'Shea wants to say something.
Sorry? Mr. O'Shea.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Councillor Charlesworth and Mrs. Radford. I mean, I have particular problems in my area, and it does take a lot of my time as well. And you know, when we've got parents even moving on the pavement, when you're standing there with council officers and put their bumper against your leg to move out the way, that's the type of, you know, attitude that we're facing. And I don't know what the solution is really, but if we could do anything, you know, we should be looking at enforcing these school travel plans, because we do actually ask them and put forward these travel plans, but they're never hardly enforced, and that's where we have the problem. But having listened to the debate this afternoon, I do support, and I really do. New builds are better than, as we said before, mobile classrooms, and this committee, when I was on it before, we had a right, should I say, debate on mobile classrooms. So I'm more than happy to move this report, Chair.
Dr. Bremner, again.
Just because I'm a father of a daughter at the primary school, my own experience is that most people walk their children to school, but it may be it's all down to each individual travel plan because they're unique. And I know that being close to a school, that they take it very seriously, because the better travel plan they have, the less hassle they have. But sometimes you come up against the issues which are immovable, such as installation of double yellow lines. But I just want to put the counter point that a lot of people do walk their children to school.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Mrs. Broadley.
Thank you. Just on that, for many years I was chair of the local PTA at the school. It was a Catholic school, so people did come by transport because they came from out of the area. And some parents did come by car, and it didn't matter how many letters we sent out, how many newsletters, people still parked in front of the school where the buses should go. They still parked on people's driveway. So the problem, even with a travel plan, I don't think will go away. I don't think there is a solution until new schools are built and, as you say, there are proper drop-off parts, because you can write and headmasters can write, but it doesn't make a lot of difference.
No, you're quite right about that, Mrs. Broadley. It's been moved and seconded.
Excuse me, Chair, what about my bat boxes?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Mr. Bolter.
as there is a potential for bat boxes, I would support that proposition.
Okay, as I was saying, it's been moved and seconded that we grant permission. I've got two outstanding items. There's the advisory note which Lonick mentioned, and we've got the bat boxes that Mr. Bolter mentioned. Are you happy to include those things in the recommendation, the proposal? Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's no more, anybody else wants to speak, or take a vote on it then, please.
Sorry, Chair, can I just clarify the condition on that?
Sorry, Chair, can I just clarify the condition on the bats? I think if you look at condition 12, it says the development hereby permitted shall not be used until bird boxes, and then in brackets for use by swifts. I suppose we could add and bats, and that will solve the problem. If members are happy with that, they can. Yeah. Oh no, yes, sorry, Chairman. Yes, you're right. Actually, I'm just reading onto that. No, that yeah, we'll come up with a condition then. Yeah, okay. on bat boxes. Yeah. Sorry, you're right, Mr. Bolter. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move to the vote on that then. All in favour? That looks to be unanimous, Ewan. Thank you very much. Item 10, any other items as Chairman has decided to take as urgent? We have any? Chairman's announcements. Thank you very much for coming. See you next time. And I'll close the meeting.